it was one of the most moving moments of honestly probably my life because it
Mm.
just hit me how intensely the woman who had proven herself to be the victim was being referred to as the perpetrator, and how much the man who had been proven in court to be the perpetrator was being framed as the victim.
Being a reporter at this moment around the internet and the culture of celebrity that the internet has made possible through social media and influencers and the rest of it is a really hard job. And my guest this week, Kat Tenbarge, does that job really, really well. I've had a couple of colleagues over the years who do this beat, and one thing they really have to suffer through is being treated as if it's not a serious beat, when I think it's absolutely the most serious thing around, because how information and misinformation moves across the internet as an attack surface is going to determine the future of democracy. And the ways in which I think we are experimenting now in celebrity culture and the rest of it with trying to, gin up support for one celebrity over another, or create a carefully crafted idea of, this celebrity is a cool person and this person is not. That is a rehearsal, it seems to me, for all kinds of creepy manipulation and propaganda that's going to happen in the future. So Kat Tenbarge is the founder of SpitfireNews.com. She has gone independent the same way I have. And we talk for about an hour here about a whole range of things, from celebrity information wars to the conservative media ecosystem to the weird new world of independent journalism, and how do we each respect the objectivity we need to pursue as reporters while also not being idiots about what's obviously happening in front of us. So without further ado, here's Kat Tenbarge. Kat Tenbarge, thank you so much for being with me on The Rip Current.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really, really appreciate it. So, okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, Kat and I were colleagues at NBC News.
Yeah.
I was there for 5 years, and we were together. I think we were on staff most of the time together, right? How long were you there?
I was there for 3 years, so a
Yeah.
majority of the time, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing you I think I saw you at like South by Southwest. I saw you
Yep.
sort of everywhere. We rarely saw one another physically, but I would constantly bump into your work, and we had conversations about stories a couple of times.
Mhm.
And so you are, tell us how you describe yourself. Like when you are thinking about who you are as a reporter and the beat that you cover.
Mhm.
I'll tell you in a second how I try to explain it to people in my life. How do you explain it to people in your life?
Well, it's a great question because it's honestly kind of difficult. Like I find that how I describe what I do changes, and it changes depending on who I'm speaking to. Because if it's someone who is very disconnected from the online world, if it's someone who's very offline, then I usually just tell them I'm a journalist and I don't go into it
Mm,
that much. But if it's someone who's in the industry or who is very online, which is increasingly more people, then I usually describe myself as an internet culture journalist. And like when I set out to describe my newsletter and to come up with a tagline for what I cover and how to describe it quickly, it was something that I spent a lot of time thinking about because I was like, this could go in so many different directions. And I settled on internet culture, politics, and media as the three pillars of what my beat sort of is.
I love that. And for people listening here, it's SpitfireNews.com is Kat's newsletter, and it's very much worth the the modest $5 she charges to subscribe, because it's a really fantastic read. And so for you, when
Thank
you are
you.
processing stories, and as we talk here,
Mhm.
we're going to get into all kinds of things. I want to talk about Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni, which you did a big 3-part series on. I
Yeah.
want to talk about Newsom's podcast, in which he's been inviting right wing media, conservative media figures on, and that's even saying it nicely. We're going to talk about the difference between being a reporter and being a sort of commentator in this new independent journalism world. We've got a number of things we
Mhm.
want to cover. But when you're thinking about like the parameters of your beat, like for me, right? So I was the tech reporter, which once upon a time you were supposed to be this kind of, I don't know, you're supposed to be this sort of upbeat nerd who was interested in, like, who was like into
Yes.
flying cars and into
Yes.
robots, and people would just as likely contact me inside a news organization for like a recommendation for a laptop
Mhm.
as they would about, stories. And I would have to say to them, I don't care about laptops. In fact, I don't think you should buy one if you can help it. If anything, I had sort of an allergic reaction to this stuff, right?
Mhm.
And but my beat over time ceased to be that. And NBC, to its credit, was really great at, like, it took me a year or two, but I managed to kind of teach the people around me, here's what the beat is. And the beat was very
Mhm.
much like, here are the unintended consequences of breakthrough ideas. Here are the places that what we thought was a good idea kind of went wrong. And I feel like I'm curious what you think, like, once upon a time, what would have been your role in, like, the early days of this? What would have been the sort of the innocent version of this versus the very sophisticated analyst of this culture that you've had to become?
Definitely. I find that sentiment of, like, people expecting the beat to be very consumer tech focused and very, just, like, not really interrogating any of the narratives that are happening in this world on a deeper level, but just telling you what to buy or telling you how to use different tech products. Or I think in sort of the space that I occupy a lot of the time, which is more pop culture stuff, it's like people expect to just be told the news that anyone could find out for themselves, basically. Like, they expect
Mm,
to just like the weather update on what celebrities are doing. And part of the reason for this expectation, especially today, is because of social media and how social media has transformed the news environment and how people get information from celebrities and public figures. But
mm,
they don't expect my beat to be interrogating the stories that are happening, like the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni case, like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, or even things that I covered before that. Like, I, for a long time, covered a specific group of influencers. And I think a lot of times people don't expect you to actually call up people in their world and ask them what they're like behind the scenes. They're not expecting the investigations, the deeper dives into the behavior. They're not expecting really accountability journalism. And I think that's a core part of what this is for me.